Hello everyone, this is Leah Whitehorse, and in this recording I'm going to be talking about the astrology of 2024. So then, we are coming into a really big year. It's a year of massive changes. And in this video, I'm just going to kind of tap into the major movements that are happening so that you have a really good overview of the year ahead. But I just wanted to mention that I also always do a monthly forecast here on YouTube. I also do a weekly forecast. It's very comprehensive over on my Patreon, and that is also available to my paid Substack members as well. And if you need even more, I also do a daily post. This is on social media, on Facebook and Instagram. And I also have a website for my daily posts as well, in case you're not on social media. So all of these links, of course, will be in the box below. So let's get into it. This is, as I say, a really big year. And one of the things that I like to do is to look at the chart for the first moment of the year. So I look at the midnight chart just as those bells are ringing and the fireworks are going off and everyone is cheering. I like to see this chart because I think it gives us a little hint of things to come. Obviously, the chart is always in motion, but I feel like because it's such a magical time, midnight and midday, these are times where we're kind of in a liminal space. So we're kind of opening a portal into the new year. And so this chart gives us a flavour of things to come. And it immediately kind of slapped me in the face because we've got Mars conjunct the galactic centre. Oh, one thing I should say before I continue is that I'm using the chart of midnight in the UK. I've set it though for 0 degrees Aries rising. So obviously our respective midnight charts will have some very small variations, given that there are time differences across the planet. But comparing the midnight chart of, say, Sydney in Australia, which is one of the first places to see in the new year, with the midnight chart of, for example, Hawaii, which is one of the last places to see in the new year, the only real difference in those charts is the position of the moon, which has travelled about 10 degrees in that time. So all the aspects that I'm referencing from the midnight chart counts for every midnight chart across the planet, not just the one in the UK. So Mars conjunct the galactic centre. This is like a high frequency activation of cosmic energy. And it feels as though we're being asked to take action on the bigger picture, because the galactic centre is the centre of all things. It's God's eye. Everything rotates around the galactic centre. So it's almost like we're being told there's a really big picture here that we've got to keep in mind. So straight away, it feels like there's a lot of energy sort of flooding through as we come into the new year. And also as well, we're going to have Pluto anaretic, Hygeia anaretic, and Sedna anaretic. So anaretic, it just means this is the final degree of each respective sign. So we've got Pluto at 29 Capricorn, Hygeia at 29 Aquarius, Sedna at 29 Taurus. So anaretic degrees are acute, they are critical degrees, they are in flux, everything is about to change. That is what this chart says. Everything is about to change. Maybe this is why we need to have a really close eye on the bigger picture. And the changes are connected to our structures, institutions. This is Capricorn. The rules, the infrastructure that we have, it's all to do with how things are set up the system is changing. And then Hygeia, in a semi-sextile to Pluto, tells us that this is about the health of society, maybe even the health of politics, but the health of society moving forwards. Aquarius is about the future. It's about society. It's also about technology. So we know then that there is something about the health of society is dependent upon perhaps these changes in the infrastructure. And then we have Sedna there, which is forming a trine to Pluto. It's forming a square to Hygeia. And with Sedna on the final degree of Taurus, this degree is associated with the weeping sisters of the Pleiades. So there are some sort of symbolic stories with this degree that speaks of difficulty or sadness. So now we have some kind of deep sadness that is connected to our resources. It's connected to how things are evolving, how we are using or misusing our resources. With Sedna having had this long journey through Taurus, we have been constantly asked to evolve as far as what we consider to be important. This is also our values, what we consider to be valuable. You know, we think of money as valuable, especially in the current system. Pluto can also speak of riches. So we've got a lot of focus on this is important because it's money. It's going to get us money or it's going to lose us money. But going forwards, Hygeia in Aquarius, maybe things have got to change because, of course, our planet is struggling with how we use and abuse our resources. I'm also just noting in this midnight chart that we have the moon, which is a representation of the people opposing Saturn. So yes, there's a little bit of a sense that as far as the public are concerned, maybe we are feeling somewhat restricted, or there's a huge amount of focus on our health. This is Virgo. And also wanting things to be better. All of us wanting, wishing, hoping things can get better. But that opposition to Saturn, maybe we're feeling a bit like we're blocked or we're being stopped by some kind of hidden forces. Or we feel like we're being blocked just by ourselves, like this kind of sense that we can't quite get it together. It's too serious, it's too much, it's too big. I can't see how this can happen. So it's really important, I think, that we need to sort of remember that Mars on the galactic center and say to ourselves, okay, this might be hard, but the little tiny things that we do on a personal level to improve our own personal circumstances and maybe, you know, that of some of the people around us, these little things do count. It's not, you know, it's not just disappearing into nothing. It's actually creating a tidal wave of change. So this midnight chart sets the stage and brings us some of the stories that we're going to be looking at moving forwards through the year. On the 2nd of January, we will have Mercury stationing direct. Of course, Mercury is retrograde in this chart. So that also tells us that there are some things that we're going to be going over, that we're going to be revisiting throughout this year. That's in relation to our understanding, Sagittarius, and it's going to be in relation to what we believe and also what we're sort of visualizing for ourselves in the future. Again, Sagittarius is also sort of future forward. So Mercury stations direct on the 2nd of January. So now we can sort of feel like things are going to start to move forwards properly for the new year. And then we move into the first big event of the year. It's coming early. We're going to have Pluto moving into Aquarius. And it's interesting that we're also going to have the Sun around Pluto at this time. So we're going to have a Sun-Pluto conjunction on that final degree of Capricorn. And then the Sun will move into Aquarius and Pluto will follow. So it's like spotlight on Pluto. Now, I've already made a video. In fact, there are 3 videos about Pluto in Aquarius. I'll link those below. There's a general introduction to this transit, and you'll find videos for Pluto in Aquarius for the signs. So there's horoscopes there for Pluto in Aquarius for everybody. But just to briefly recap, Pluto in Aquarius, wherever Pluto moves, he talks about kind of breaking things apart, breaking things down, getting rid of what isn't necessary, and then regenerating that area. It is taking us through a process of transformation, deep, powerful, profound transformation. And in Aquarius, this is in relation to society, humanity. It's in relation to how we live together as groups. I always think of cities whenever I look at Aquarius. That's the image that comes to mind. Aquarius is also about technology. It's about the future. I mentioned this before with Hygeia. So we need to go through some kind of massive regeneration in the way that we live together and work together, and kind of our political systems. All of this needs to change. Aquarius is also about freedom. Our freedoms are perhaps changing positively, negatively. We always get both expressions in our sort of collective experience of astrology. This is what I tend to find. And sometimes we do see some of the shadow expressions first and foremost, especially because there still is a lot of sort of toxic stuff going on, particularly in politics. But the people, Aquarius, are wanting to take back their power. Pluto. Is this going to be a time of revolutionary change, or just a time of revolutions? These are some of the themes that we're thinking about with Pluto in Aquarius. We might also be looking at new sources of power. So new sources of power could speak of people and new ways of directing society or controlling society through new political systems. That's a possibility that are radically different from what we've had before. But we could literally be talking about new forms of power that are going to change things for everybody. Some of the perhaps more unpleasant ideas of Pluto in Aquarius is that there could be some emphasis on surveillance, the control, Pluto, of society. How can we control the people, especially if they are wanting to take back their power, Pluto, for their freedom, for their liberation, Aquarius. So we're going to be looking a lot at these kinds of themes. It's not going to happen all at once. We're getting a preview. Pluto isn't going to stay in Aquarius just yet. He's just kind of dipping his feet in once again. He's already done this before. He's going to dip his feet in and then revisit Capricorn and finish up there. But we're going to have some of those themes coming into play when Pluto goes into Aquarius. And we have, like I say, a long period of time to work through all of this process of change. I will just mention around the 13th of February, Mars will form a conjunction to Pluto on the 0 degrees of Aquarius. So just watch what happens around that time, because Mars is an activator. He animates, he brings things alive, he sort of heats it up. So we should see some kind of event or conversation that's happening around this time. Keep an eye on the news, because this will show us how things might be going forwards, or what are some of the themes that we might be working with in the real world moving forwards. On the 25th of March, we are going to go into eclipse season. So there are going to be 2 eclipses in this particular season. So we've got a lunar eclipse in Libra. This is at 5 degrees of Libra. And then we're going to have a solar eclipse. This is on the 8th of April, and that will be at 19 degrees of Aries. So of course this is following the pattern of the nodes being in Aries, North Node, and Libra, South Node. So we may be seeing some kind of endings around agreements. This is the lunar eclipse in Libra, and maybe some kind of important new start. So this is the solar eclipse in Aries that is centered around taking initiative, new beginnings, just generally new beginnings, a new start, a big new start that's important for all of us. And also we could see some themes around independence coming through as well with the solar eclipse in Aries. So we have these two eclipses, and then in the midst of all of that, we're going to have a Mercury retrograde, beginning of the Mercury retrograde. So this is on the 1st of April. That is April Fool's Day in the UK. So this is perfect in a way for Mercury because he is the trickster after all. So Mercury is going to station retrograde at 27 Aries and will go back to 15 Aries. This now is catching my attention. I've just been talking about this solar eclipse in Aries. So actually Mercury is going to keep activating this eclipse degree. So I'm wondering if there's going to be some kind of either delayed new start that is important centering around this Aries eclipse, or whether it's going to be like it's in almost like 3 parts because Mercury will have hit this degree 3 times by the time it finishes its retrograde and has kind of moved out of the shadow zone again. So there's something interesting going on around this eclipse period. Just keep an eye on your Aries house in your personal chart just to see what themes come up around this time. On the 21st of April, we will have Jupiter conjunct Uranus. So this is a really big month, and this is a really big aspect, and it's a one-hit wonder. So they're only going to meet once in this particular cycle. So Jupiter will conjoin Uranus. They are going to be at 21 degrees of Taurus. So when we combine these energies, Jupiter is about faith and belief and kind of massive opportunities, huge opportunities for change. Uranus for revolution, a big revolutionary change that is related to our resources. Is this something to do with sort of digital banking, digital money, all these kinds of alternative systems? Is there some kind of change happening around those things? It's possible we could see the shadow expression, which is connected to sort of great instability. There's a huge amount of instability around our finances around this time. So, you know, there's the positive and the negative. I mean, it is an interesting combination, though, these two planets coming together, a social planet, Jupiter, and a transpersonal planet, Uranus. So whatever it is, it's affecting society. It's affecting all of us. But we could also say that, you know, whatever's happening here, it feels novel. It feels new. This is Uranus. It feels like it's very futuristic. So it's almost like, I want to kind of say, being catapulted into the future. So maybe there is some kind of development around this period that is really going to help us to free up some resources, because again, Taurus energy, especially with Sedna there on that final degree of Taurus, she's really wanting us to focus on these issues. So freeing up our resources, or some kinds of resources for free. Is this speaking about the conversation connected to universal basic income? So this is coming up a lot now because of the sort of developments that we're going to have as far as technology is concerned. Obviously, if a lot of people lose their jobs, or we don't need to work in certain industries anymore because the robots can do it, Pluto going into Aquarius, then there needs to be a conversation about, well, how are people going to live if a lot of things are going to be automated moving forwards? So I'm just throwing out some ideas. I will obviously be talking much more about all of these aspects as we go through the year, but this just gives us a flavour of things that are happening. As far as our own personal lives are concerned, we could see some kind of big change, Jupiter conjunct Uranus, in the area of life illustrated by the house that is affected in our personal charts. So big changes, freeing up resources. This is going to be something that may feel a little destabilizing, but also quite exciting. I think there is a lot of excitable energy with this combination of planets. Moving from there, we then have Mercury stationing direct. So whatever is happening, we're probably not going to act on it immediately, or maybe we just need to be mindful that Mercury is still retrograde when we have Jupiter conjunct Uranus. But as I say, 25th of April, Mercury stations direct. We start to move away from that, and then we move into May. And on the 3rd of May, we will have Neptune moving on to the final degree of Pisces. Super, super important. This is the last degree of the entire chart, the entire zodiac, the end. Everything here is in flux, particularly with it being Neptune as well, the ruler of the oceans. So Neptune is going to be on this degree until the 3rd of September. And then he will move off this degree backwards. He'll still be in Pisces because he'll be in retrograde motion. But we're just getting a flavour now of this acute issue that is centered around us as a collective, the unity of people, the cosmos. It's the everything. Everything may seem incredibly uncertain whilst Neptune is on this final degree of Pisces. So 3rd of May through to the 3rd of September. A long period of time where we feel like we just don't know what is happening. And yet at the same time, there is this very imaginative energy coming through here. It's almost like all our ideas, all our possibilities, everything is just like on the table in front of us. And it just looks like this massive jumble sale of possibilities. That's how I'm feeling. This jumble sale of possibilities. What do I pick? What do I choose? What is best? Maybe we're filled with a lot of wishes and dreams around this time. There's a possibility that there's some connection with water. Is there something going on with the water? We've already got Saturn, going through Pisces, which is telling us that we're dealing with the problems with water, the sea levels rising, for example, places disappearing because of the sea levels rising, tidal waves or some kind of pollution in the water. So there's something along those lines perhaps. And I was also thinking about how Neptune can be associated with the saviour. So the saviour archetype. And so that just led me to sort of thinking about save us, save all of us. So yes, maybe going forwards, we are sort of talking more about the wilderness, the wild, the sea, the wild places. This is Pisces. And the need to save it so that we can also save ourselves. Now, this theme stays in play for a time because we are going to have Jupiter forming a sextile to Neptune. This is on the 23rd of May. Now, by this point, Sedna will have moved into Gemini. So Sedna moves into Gemini on the 27th of April. There is an article over on my Patreon and also on my Substack for paying members all about Sedna in Gemini. So by the time Jupiter reaches that anaretic degree of Taurus, Sedna has moved on. But still, we have now again the huge emphasis on our resources and our security. Now, of course, this is a sextile, so this is an invitation. It says, if we have great compassion, if we use the wonderful imagination we have been given, then maybe there is a big opportunity to save everybody or to help everybody who needs to be helped. There's something here that feels really positive, but it also feels really acute because Jupiter and Neptune are both on these anaretic degrees. And then just a few days later, on the 26th of May, Jupiter will move into Gemini. So, of course, it will run into Sedna straight away. We get this sense of Jupiter going into Gemini that suddenly everything gets really busy, particularly in our own personal charts. Your Gemini house is likely to sort of explode, not in a bad way, but sort of explode with activity, because Gemini speaks of multiples. It's the twins. It speaks of multiple conversations, multiple connections, multiple amounts of information. And it's a sign where Jupiter is considered to be in detriment. Now, it doesn't mean bad. It just means that it finds it harder to sort of act at its best in Gemini, because Jupiter is about sort of bringing all this information together. Jupiter has the overview. He is the sky god. He looks down from above and he sees everything that he needs to see, and he understands how it fits together. But Gemini is all the kind of different parts. So we've got all these different scattered energies going on here, and it feels a little bit like, how am I going to put this all together? Now, on a collective level, it might just be that we're talking a lot about international communications, because Jupiter has this international flavour. He rules Sagittarius, the sign of the overseas and foreign places. But we could also be speaking about education, schooling, publishing. These things are going to be really magnified. These themes are going to be magnified. Other themes that are associated with Gemini, as far as a collective is concerned, is also about transportation, how we move around. This is going to change. A little voice in my head sort of tapped me on the shoulder, and suddenly I was thinking about self-driven cars. Obviously, I know that these are already on the horizon, but is this now a big move to bring these onto our streets? What are we going to feel about all of this? Bearing in mind, Jupiter is now trine to Pluto, and that will be exact on the 3rd of June. So clearly, these big conversations or big changes around our education, around our transportation, around how we communicate with one another is making some kind of impact here. It could be a positive impact with the trine, because trines are considered to be flowing aspects. But sometimes, bearing in mind Jupiter is a bit scattered here, it can feel a little like things are spinning out of control. Remember too that Neptune is still on the 29th degree of Pisces, where everything just feels a bit like, what is going on? What is happening here? So we have different ways of interpreting how this energy might play out. But certainly Jupiter at the end of the day tells us there are opportunities for development here. We can develop the way that we connect with one another and talk to one another. We can develop our minds. Is this something to do with, I want to say mind control now with Pluto? Okay, I'll throw it out there. So we've got mind control. We have the idea of technology that in some way helps us perhaps to control the mind, or control how we use the mind, positives or negatives. There's so much going on about the development of consciousness. Jupiter conjunct Sedna. Sedna is going to speak a lot about the development of consciousness moving forwards, as well as what is consciousness? What is this about? These kinds of questions are really going to come in when we are talking about technology, computers, robots, the singularity, robots becoming conscious. Is this possible? Maybe. I don't think it's happening just yet, but the conversation about it is perhaps becoming more obvious around this time because of Jupiter being in Gemini. It will be in Gemini for a year, and is also paving the way for when Uranus moves into Gemini in 2025. So Jupiter goes into Gemini, forms the trine to Pluto. We then get another Mercury retrograde. So this is on the 5th of August. And Mercury will be retrograde firstly in Virgo and then in Leo. So Mercury will station at 4 Virgo and it will go back to 21 Leo. So we're looking at themes once again to do with health and daily life, Virgo. And then also maybe children, playfulness, the idea of our creativity. This is Leo. Could also be associated with the stage and acting and pastimes and all those kinds of things as well. So these themes are going to be in play during the Mercury retrograde. On the 19th of August, we're going to have a square between Jupiter and Saturn. This is super important. It is the first of 3 squares, and this aspect will be in play until June 2025. So Jupiter square to Saturn, this is the opening square, the waxing square. We had a conjunction in Aquarius, 0 Aquarius, back in 2020, in December of 2020, actually on or around the solstice. And that was at 0 degrees of Aquarius. It was the great mutation. Now, what that means is that each Jupiter conjunction to Saturn going forwards from that point right up until 2140, all those conjunctions will now take place in air signs. So this illustrates that we are moving into this period associated with the element of air, intellect, communication, the mind, how we use our head. I've already been speaking about this. Jupiter moving into Gemini, Sedna moving into Gemini. And of course, this 0 degrees of Aquarius, well, that's kind of important right now because as we have this first opening square between Jupiter and Saturn, we have Pluto sat on that 0 degrees of Aquarius. So we're really getting a lot of emphasis then on these new beginnings, these transformative, potent, powerful new beginnings. But now we have some kind of test. We want to develop the mind or develop our education, develop our transport systems, but there is something that is restricting us, that's holding us back. All of us in our own personal charts might experience this push-pull effect, wanting to expand wherever Jupiter is moving in the chart, but feeling held back or restricted or some kind of heavy responsibility where Saturn is in the chart. So maybe on a collective level, we are looking at themes that are connected to the idea of wanting to develop our capacity for transportation, or we're wanting to develop the mind, we're wanting to develop these conversations to establish peace, Saturn in Pisces, or to create greater cohesion between all of us, or to stabilize the planet or stabilize the waters or the weather systems. There's lots of different ways that we could interpret this. But certainly there is some strong feeling that Saturn is saying, before you expand here, before you go over the top here, before you make a sweeping judgment here, you need to come back to what you feel, Pisces. You need to come back to what is meaningful. Is this meaningful? Is this important? Is this going to help all of us? Is it going to be good for all of us moving forwards? So we have, like I say, this push-pull effect with Jupiter square to Saturn. And sometimes we can sort of grate against that. It's interesting that as Jupiter squares Saturn for the first time, Mars is hanging out close to Jupiter. So there's enormous frustration, the desire to jump ahead, the desire to go large, to make this big, to make this happen. We want things to be moving fast, but Saturn is slowing everything down, perhaps for a reason, going back to Neptune on that final degree of Pisces, because everything is a little clouded. Maybe we're thinking we can see clearly, but actually there's some kind of information or there's something missing. There's something essential that's missing in some of these big ideas that we're having. So moving on, we have Mercury stationing direct in Leo at 21 Leo on the 28th of August. I mentioned the Mercury retrograde before. So from there, we then go to Pluto retrograde, re-entering Capricorn. This is on the 2nd of September. We just have one day where Pluto and Neptune are both on anaretic degrees. Technically in a sextile, the exact sextile isn't going to be between them until 2025, 2026 time, but they're very close now to this sextile aspect. So we have this day when both Neptune and Pluto are on the anaretic degrees of their signs, and then Neptune will move off that degree, but Pluto is going to stay on this degree now until it enters Aquarius for the long term on the 19th of November. So now we really hit the finale of Pluto in Capricorn. This is going to be an extremely critical period. Again, that does not necessarily mean bad. It just means that it's super important. There is now increased to acute levels need for change. Pluto is applying the pressure now because this has to happen. Whatever Pluto instructs has to happen. There has to be change fundamentally in our systems, architecture, structures, institutions, the people at the top, the rules. Something has to give because Pluto is finishing in Capricorn. Now, in the middle of all of this, as Pluto goes back into Capricorn, we enter eclipse season. So we're going to have a lunar eclipse in Pisces, and this is the first of the Pisces eclipses. This is on the 18th of September at 25 Pisces. So now we are seeing some kind of important culmination that is associated with Pisces themes. So once again, we're looking at the idea of peace, spirituality, the collective, the cosmos, compassion, kindness, those who are lost, the forgotten, the inner saboteur, the collective shadow is also part of this, the unconscious, the collective pool of the unconscious. There is a lot of material coming up here. And so we're needing to pay attention to what happens around this lunar eclipse, because we are moving into a series of eclipses in Pisces once the nodes move signs. We're also going to have a solar eclipse in Libra. This is on the 2nd of October. It's at 10 degrees of Libra. And this is the last of the Libra eclipses in this cycle. So we have an important new start, some kind of new relationship, new agreement, or new move towards equality, balance, fairness. These are the themes that we associate with Libra, an important new start because it is a new moon and it is an eclipse. So now as we march towards the end of 2024, Pluto will enter Aquarius on the 19th of November, finally getting off that final degree of Capricorn, finishing the job. We are done now with all this Capricorn stuff. Pluto is going to be in Aquarius until the 3rd of March 2043. So I've already spoken about the themes that will be in play here, and also, as I said before, in separate recordings. The links are below. I'm just repeating myself in case somebody is skipping straight to this point. So Pluto moves into Aquarius. Here is the big, massive change for all of us. And then we get Mercury stationing retrograde on the 26th of November. Now this catches my eye because Mercury is going to station retrograde where it's stationed direct on the 2nd of January at the beginning of the year. So it almost feels like we've got this bookend kind of going on with Mercury. It's like he's taking us back to the beginning of the year, asking us to reflect. saying, what have you learned? What have you learned during this time? We're going to have this retrograde all in Sagittarius, from 22 Sagittarius through to 6 Sagittarius. So there's a lot of conversation here about how we're thinking about things, how we see things, our beliefs, our philosophy, our world view. And maybe our world view during this year has changed. And this is why we're being asked to reflect upon these things. And then whilst Mercury is retrograde, we are also going to begin with a Mars retrograde. So this is on the 6th of December. So Mars will station retrograde at 6 degrees of Leo. He will go backwards through Leo, re-enter Cancer around the 6th of January 2025. And then will remain in retrograde motion in Cancer until the 24th of February 2025, when Mars will station direct on 17 degrees of Cancer. So 17 degrees Cancer through to 6 Leo. These are the degrees that will be affected by the Mars retrograde. Of course, for all of us, we are looking at themes that are connected with our personal self-expression, where we need attention. This is to do with Leo, but also how we can take action on our comfort, on our sort of insecurities, on our roots. What do we need to do? What are we doing to ourselves, to each other? Mars in Cancer is about our home, our personal home, but also our home here together, all of us. There's a feeling we need to go through some kind of reassessment about how we act and the goals that we have when it comes to home and family and roots, and what it is to be a family here on planet Earth. So Mars is going to push for a lot of this. And also, we could say as well that we're kind of exploring issues connected with identity. So this is Leo. It's ruled by the sun. And also we could say with Leo that we might be exploring themes connected to our ego, whereas Cancer is ruled by the moon and it's connected to our feelings. How does ego and our emotions affect what we do? So Mars is action. So these are some of the ideas that we're going to have coming into play with this Mars retrograde. Again, of course, I will be doing much more about this nearer the time. We're just getting a little overview of what's happening. So we're going to have the year ending with Mercury retrograde first, and then Mars retrograde. It will take us right through to the end of the year. We'll have Mercury stationing direct on the 15th of December 2024. And then as Mars is still in retrograde motion and we're doing a lot of contemplation and not really feeling as though we can take action, because when Mars is retrograde, it takes that energy inwards. He's asking us to look at where we might have internal conflicts that are in some way compromising our ability to act or affecting the kind of goals that we have, or just affecting our motivation. Whilst this is happening, we're going to have the second of these squares between Jupiter and Saturn. So again, I talked about this earlier. Use the timestamps below if you want to jump around to listen to what I said earlier in this piece. So Jupiter square to Saturn. Once again, we come back to this push-pull effect as we close the year. This is on Christmas Eve, 24th of December, 2024. We are once again pushed to explore, what is it that I'm trying to develop? This idea, this thought, this conversation. What is it that I'm trying to do here? Because right now Jupiter is retrograde. So again, it's talking about the inner journey. We're in this process right now of exploring within how we've made all these different connections within ourselves, these ideas, these philosophies, these judgments, the judgments that we've come to now need some kind of reassessment. Jupiter retrograde in Gemini. So we're reassessing how we've come to all of these conclusions. And the point is sort of being forced by Saturn over there in Pisces, because either something doesn't add up, or it's not realistic, or it is in some way holding us back. It's blocking us. It's blocking our imagination, or it's the inner saboteur that's kind of stopping us from being able to fully express ourselves, to fully engage with one another, or even, stopping us from learning what we need to learn. So Jupiter square to Saturn just revisits all these themes, asking us to look once again. What do you know? What do you feel? This is going to be a long conversation throughout 2024 with these aspects in play. And it's interesting that it's in the midst of all of this massive shift into these airy signs, with Jupiter going into Gemini, Sedna going into Gemini, Pluto going into Aquarius. We have so much focus on the head. What's going on in the head? How can we figure this out? How can we increase our knowledge and understanding of one another? It's important because we need to change society, and society is changing. Humanity is changing. And that might feel a little scary sometimes. But if we can bring it back to ourselves and find that inner peace that Neptune in Pisces is talking about, to be able to listen to our own intuition, then we can manage these very vibrant, powerful changes going forwards. This concludes my reading for the astrology of 2024. I hope you found it helpful, and I wish you many blessings on your path.